Nancy?
Good afternoon.
Hi, Nancy.
How's everybody today?
Good, Nancy. How are you?
I'm watching a family of wild turkeys behind our place here.
Oh,
Well, Mr. Chair, I'm very happy to report that our live streaming is up and running and we are recording. I do believe we have the applicants and pre-registered members of the public that we need to start the meeting. So whenever you're ready, Mr. Chair.
I think we might as well start. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us for this meeting of the Committee of Adjustment for the Town of Pelham. I'd like to do a couple of things before we start the formal portion of the meeting. The attendance, we have myself, I'm Don Cook, I'm chairman of the meeting. We have Mr. John Clausen, who is a member of the committee, and Mrs. Sandra Marsh is a member of the committee. Town staff available for our discussions today. Clerk and Chair and Secretary of the Committee of Adjustment of the Town of Pelham, Nancy Bizzato. Mrs. Holly Wilford, who is the secretary for our meeting today. Also, we have Sarah Leach, who is looking after the Zoom meeting. Staff include Mr. Curtis Thompson from our planning department of the Town of Pelham, and Tolga Iden, who is an engineering technologist with our Public Works and Engineering department. I'd also like to thank the agents and all those waiting in the waiting room to listen to their applications. Prior to calling the meeting to order, I would like to do one thing. I would like to ask that we give a moment of silence to our former member, Mr. Bill Sheldon. As Vice Chairman of the Committee of Adjustment, Bill took membership on the Committee of Adjustment very, very seriously. His work in the committee was greatly appreciated. Bill was a very, very passionate supporter of the Town of Pelham over the years and has served on many special committees of council. Bill will be sorely missed by all that knew him. And with that, I'd like to hold a moment of silence. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. And now let's start the meeting. This is an electronic meeting of the Committee of Adjustment for the Town of Pelham. Everyone present and viewing at home will be given an opportunity to comment on the applications being heard. Please address your comments and questions through the chair. This public meeting has been called to satisfy the requirements of the Planning Act and council bylaws. Notice of this meeting has been given by prepaid first-class mail to all persons listed as owners in the last revised assessment roll within 60 meters, 200 feet of the subject properties. In addition, a public notice sign has been posted on the lands and the information has been provided on the town's Committee of Adjustment webpage. Agencies commenting on applications may request that certain conditions be imposed should the application be approved. Voicing objections to these conditions will not adversely affect the committee's decision. The purpose of the application and relative correspondence will be heard, following which the applicant will be given the opportunity to address the application. Any person concerned with the application will then be given an opportunity to participate in the meeting. If you have pre-registered to speak during the public portion of the application, you will be brought into the Zoom meeting and will be unmuted. Please state your name and mailing address for the record. Please be advised, once you have finished speaking, you will be removed from the Zoom meeting room. If you are live streaming at home and wish to submit a comment during the application, you may do so by emailing clerks@pelham.ca. At the conclusion of the public portion of the meeting, these comments will be read into the record. If you submit comments after the public portion has been closed, Your comments will not be considered. And my Zoom is telling me something that is using my microphone, and I guess I better allow it. At the conclusion of the discussion, the committee will render a decision advised of any applicable conditions. Specific wording for the conditions will be determined by the committee following the public portion of this hearing. Copies of the decisions will be mailed to the applicant or agent and to any other person who files a written request. If you wish to be provided a copy of the decision, please contact the Secretary Treasurer in writing as soon as possible. The Secretary Treasurer's contact information is available on the upcoming PowerPoint presentation and is also available on the town's website. Any person, corporation, or public body has the right to appeal either the decision itself or the conditions of consent to the local appeal body within 20 days of the decision for minor variances and with 20 days of the mailing of the decision for consent applications. This meeting is being conducted by Zoom webinar and is also being live streamed on the town's YouTube channel. You may wish to put your view on gallery view by clicking the top right corner from speaker view. We ask that you are mindful of background noise for the duration of the meeting. Committee members are asked to mute their microphones until they're asked to speak. Please raise your hand if you would like to speak and vote by raising your hand. Please note that attendees who have registered will remain in the waiting room via telephone or electronically until their application of interest is brought forward to the committee. Those participating online via Zoom will be asked by the chair to raise their virtual hands when they wish to speak. On a computer, you can do this by clicking on Participants in the bottom center of the screen and by clicking Raise Hand. On a mobile device, you can tap Raise Hand in the bottom left corner. You will then be called upon to speak and your microphone will be unmuted by staff. If you are participating by phone, you will be unmuted by staff when the agenda item you have registered for is being discussed. Applicants, agents, and attendees are advised that they are free to leave the webinar once the decision is made. We have already introduced the hearing panel and staff of the town of Pelham. I will now ask members of the committee, does any member of this panel have a pecuniary interest in accordance with the Ontario Municipal Conflict of Interest Act in any of the applications to be considered at this time? Please respond. Mr. Clausen.
I have none.
Mrs. Marsh.
I have none.
And I also have none. Ms. Wilford, have there been any requests for withdrawal or adjournment?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, the applicant for A6/2020P, which is for 257 Chandler Road, has requested an adjournment Sendai in order to work with the Niagara Region and town planning staff to hopefully receive support comments. We do have the applicant in the meeting now, and that is Craig Trotter.
Mr. Trotter, if you wish to speak?
No, I just want to have the adjournment for now.
Are we in a position to have a motion to adjourn this particular application? Do I have a mover? Mrs. Marsh?
I'll move for the adjournment.
Do I have a seconder?
I'll second it.
We will call the vote. All in favor? Carried. Your application has been agreed to be adjourned at Sendai, and we will await rescheduling of your application.
Through you, Mr. Chair, thank you. The application will be rescheduled for those members of the public who have pre-registered to speak on this application. For your information, this application has been requested to be adjourned, meaning it will be rescheduled at a future time. We thank you for pre-registering, and when this application will be coming back to the committee, we will reach out to you and we will let you know. And if you wish to pre-register and speak, we'll certainly make those arrangements with you. Having said that, if you wish to leave the meeting, you're welcome to do so, as this application won't be moving forward today. And
Mr. Trotter,
Yes.
you agree to the adjournment?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
Ms. Wilford?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Thank you. Just also for your information, you may wish to hear application A24/2020P after B6/2020P. That minor variance is related to that consent, but that is, of course, up to the committee.
Ms. Wilford, I agree. Members of the committee, I think we should probably look at the conveyance first and then deal with the variance applications. We could almost do them concurrently, but I would suggest we do the conveyance first and the variance second. Is that agreeable to members of the committee? Mr. Clausen?
Yes.
Marsh?
I agree.
And that's the way we'll do it. We will do the conveyance first with regard to that application, and then we'll follow with the variance. With that, we're going to move to our first application, which is application A22-220. It is an application at John 9 Street in the town of Pelham. There are two sections of the zoning bylaw. Ms. Wilford, would you please read this particular sections of the report that's in front of the committee?
Just one moment. We are just sharing our screen so that the members and the viewing public will be able to see our PowerPoint. Are we good? Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Committee of Adjustment hearing, Tuesday, September 1st, 2020, 4 p.m. on Zoom. Committee of Adjustment. All Town of Pelham in-person Committee of Adjustment hearings have been canceled. Instead, the town is holding all Committee of Adjustment hearings electronically via Zoom. Please note, no decisions have been made prior to this public meeting. This presentation is based upon the Town of Pelham's Planning Department report and analysis. All comments received from commenting agencies and the public have been forwarded in full to the Committee of Adjustment members for their consideration. Participants are reminded. Ensure your background is free from offensive or vulgar material. If inappropriate material is visible, you will be removed from the meeting. Vulgar or offensive language will not be tolerated. If inappropriate language is used, you'll be removed from the meeting. Participant microphones and video cameras will remain off until they are called to speak. Once your comments have been heard by the committee, your microphones will be muted. Once voting on an item has taken place, participants will be removed from the meeting completely. You may resume viewing the meeting via live stream. Decorum. The Committee of Adjustment is a formal public hearing requiring decorum, meaning all comments are to be made through the chair. If you have pre-registered to speak, you will be given an opportunity to address the committee at the public portion of the meeting. If you are live streaming and wish to submit a comment live, please email clerks@pelham.ca. Please note, comments must be received during the public portion of the meeting, otherwise they will not be considered. Disrespectful comments will not be tolerated. Cheering, booing, or hissing from the gallery will not be tolerated. Please note, if decorum is lost, the meeting may be recessed and persons be asked to leave. Application number A22/2020P 9 John Street. Excerpts from Planning Report. The subject land is located on the northwest corner of John Street and Stella Street and known locally as 9 John Street in the town of Pelham. The minor variance application requests relief from Section 13.2C, maximum lot coverage, to permit a maximum lot coverage of 32.04%, whereas 30% is permitted. Section 13.2F, minimum exterior side yard, to permit a minimum exterior side yard setback of 3.06 meters, whereas 5 meters is required. To date, the following comments have been received. Building Department. Building permits are required. Public Works Department, no comments. Public, no comments were received at the time of writing this report. Please note, the Clerk's Department has received comments from Michael and Marion Whittaker. These comments expressed concerns regarding a tulip tree potentially being removed at the junction of John Street and Stella Street. These comments were forwarded in full to the Committee of Adjustment members. Is the variance minor in nature? Reducing the exterior side yard and increasing the lot coverage are minor in nature, as they will improve the streetscape along Stella Street, providing more street edge enclosures with the house situated closer to the street. The variance will also allow for a desirable rear yard landscaped amenity area to be maintained while still providing more design flexibility for a larger building footprint. Given the lack of sidewalks along the west side of Stella Street, the boulevard appears larger than normal, thus reducing the perceived negative impact associated with inconsistent building alignment. The exterior side yard reduction is considered minor overall, subject to the proposed condition of a satisfactory elevation plan at building permit. Is the variance desirable for the development or use of the land? Reducing the exterior side yard and increasing the lot coverage are both desirable for the lands, as they will allow more design flexibility for the future residential dwelling with a larger ground floor area, but also maintain a large rear area amenity. The exterior side yard reduction is also desirable for the neighborhood if the side elevation plan is designed with high quality architectural care to urban design. Does the variance maintain the general intent and purpose of the official plan? Both variances maintain the general purpose and intent of the official plan because they do not compromise the neighborhood's ability to be adequately serviced, maintain land use compatibility while also improving the streetscape and urban design of Stella Street by providing a front porch closer to the public realm, subject to the condition for an adequate side elevation plan. Does the variance maintain the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw? Both variances maintain the general intent of the zoning bylaw because the dwelling will still allow for adequate drainage and landscaped amenity area and maintain a consistent building alignment along Stella Street while still providing a positive interface between the private and public realm. Planning staff are of the opinion that the proposal applies current planning and development principles dealing with appropriate infill development, making efficient use of the designated urban area lands, providing design flexibility where suitable to do so. The proposed minor variances should not negatively impact the surrounding neighborhood with regards to land use incompatibility, traffic, privacy, and stormwater runoff. In planning staff's opinion, the application is consistent with the provincial policy statement and conforms to the provincial, regional, and local plans. Planning staff recommend that application number A22/2020P be approved subject to the following conditions. That all necessary building permits are required prior to construction commencing to the satisfaction of the chief building official. At the time of building permit, provide an east exterior side elevation plan that positively contributes to the public street through the use of a front porch windows symmetrically proportionate to the building's mass and a congruent use of exterior cladding, etc., to the satisfaction of the Director of Community Planning and Development. If you wish to receive a copy of the Notice of Decision, please contact the Secretary-Treasurer in writing as soon as possible. Nancy Bizzato, Secretary-Treasurer, Committee of Adjustment, 20 Pelham Town Square, P.O. Box 400, Fonthill, Ontario, LOS 1E0, and jbizzato@pelham.ca. This contact information can also be found at the Town of Pelham's website. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Wilford. I understand the representatives are Mr. Duffy and I assume a representative from his consulting firm, Upper Canada Consultants, may wish to. Do you wish to add anything to Ms. Wilford's review of the planning report?
Yes, thanks, Mr. Chair. Nice to be with you this afternoon. Yeah, we are representing Mr. Duffy this afternoon, and with me is Ethan Lamon, who's a new member of Upper Canada's team. And Ethan's just going to be taking the committee members through a brief presentation just to provide a bit of a more graphical overview of what's actually being proposed on the land. So at this time, we'd like to share our screen, and I'll let Ethan take over.
Thank you, Mr. Rowe.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we will just wait for the consultants to request to share their screen with us.
There you go.
Okay, so can everybody see that?
Just give us one moment. It does appear your presentation is on the screen for us to see. Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Lehman?
So, hello committee members and everyone present. I'm Ethan Lamon. I'm a junior planner at Upper Canada Consultants. We're thankful for this opportunity to present a short justification and a bit of overview for the minor variances for 9 John Street. So first, a bit of background for the site. As previously mentioned, the address is 9 John Street. It's located on the corner of John and Stella Streets. The lot size is approximately 0.065 hectares, which is 0.16 acres. It has 21.43 meters of frontage along John Street. And the property is currently vacant, and the owner is seeking to build a single detached dwelling on the property. So before we get into the variances, a bit of background on how the site was created. So 7 and 9 John Street were severed from 36 Stella Street through applications last year. 36 Stella Street was an oversized residential lot. So the current applications refer to 9 John Street and are a result of the owner's preferred home design. So as mentioned before, there's 2 minor variances requested. The first is a request to reduce the exterior side yard from 5 meters to 3.06 meters, which represents a 1.94 or 6.36 foot reduction. And the second variance requested is an increase in the maximum lot coverage from 30% to 32.0%, which represents an increase of 2.04%. So the following slides will evaluate how the requested variances satisfy the 4 tests of a minor variance. So just to reiterate, the 4 tests are: does the variance meet the general intent and purpose of the official plan? Does the variance meet the intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw? Is the variance desirable for the appropriate development or use of the land, building, or structure? And is the variance minor in nature? So first, does the variance meet the general intent and purpose of the official plan? So the property is located in the urban settlement boundary and is designated as urban living area in the town of Pelham official plan. The proposal is considered to be consistent with all of the official plan policies for these designations, as it represents appropriate residential development that makes efficient use of the existing infrastructure. The single detached dwelling that is proposed is permitted under the official plan designations and is consistent with the dwelling typology of the area, further reinforcing the goals of the official plan in maintaining and enhancing neighborhood character. So second, does the variance meet the intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw? The site is zoned as residential R1 in the town's zoning bylaw. The proposal is consistent with the overall intent of the bylaw to create livable, low-density residential communities. In terms of land use, the requirements under the R1 zone specify that only single detached dwellings are permitted, and that's exactly the type of dwelling that's proposed. The bylaw also seeks to ensure compatibility with surrounding land use. The proposed design of the dwelling is compatible with the character of the existing neighborhood in terms of building placement, height, and massing. The requested increase in lot coverage is partly due to the provision of a covered porch at the front of the dwelling, which is desirable from a design perspective and helps enhance the streetscape. Compatibility between properties is further maintained as all setbacks from adjacent residential properties conform to the bylaw requirement. Third, is the proposal desirable for the appropriate development or use of the land, building, or structure? So the proposed development is appropriate for the development of the site, as the proposal allows for previously underutilized residential lands in the existing built boundary to be used for housing. The proposed design of the dwelling is consistent with the character of the surrounding area. It enhances the streetscape through positive design features, including facade variation and a street-facing covered porch. The variances do not facilitate any negative impacts on neighboring properties, as the required separation between buildings is maintained. And finally, is the variance minor in nature? So the requested exterior side yard reduction from 5 meters to 3.06 meters represents a total reduction of only 1.94 meters or 6.36 feet. The impact of this minor reduction is mitigated by an additional 7.5 meter landscape strip between the road and the property line, So the actual physical setback from the street to the dwelling is approximately 10.5 meters or 34 feet. The additional boulevard setback helps to maintain sight lines at the intersection of John and Stella Streets, ensuring road safety. And as previously mentioned, there's no requested setbacks from adjacent properties. The maximum lot coverage variance is mainly required to facilitate a covered porch, which is desirable from a design perspective. And the requested increase only represents a total area of 13.29 meters squared or 143 square feet, which is not considered to be a noticeable increase. No neighboring properties are negatively impacted as a result in the reduction in side yard setback and the minor increase in building footprint. So in conclusion, the requested variances satisfy the 4 tests of a minor variance under the Planning Act, and the proposal is consistent with all appropriate policies. These variances help to facilitate a built form that is not only compatible with the existing area, but it also helps to enhance the character of the neighborhood through positive design features. In short, the proposal represents good planning principles through the provision of housing while maintaining the neighborhood character. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Ms. Wilford and Mrs. Pizzato, have any people pre-registered to speak on this particular application?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, we do have a member of the public who's pre-registered, and that is Mike Whittaker, and we're just going to unmute him. He is in the meeting now, and we'll let him speak.
Mr. Whittaker, thank you for joining our meeting.
Mr. Whittaker, if you could just unmute yourself. We're trying to unmute you. There you go. Thank you very much.
I'll try again. Good afternoon.
Thank you for joining our meeting, Mr. Whittaker.
Yes. Fonthill has lost a number of old trees which have been removed without much discussion, and we've read about this in the local paper, The Voice, in recent editions. Niagara-on-the-Lake and Toronto have controls regarding tree removal, and I believe that the town of Pelham had some protection concerning trees such as the tulip tree and other Carolinian forest trees only found in this area of Canada. My wife and I attended previous hearings of the Committee of Adjustment when this was discussed, and they asked that the builder do everything in order to protect this particular tulip tree. 2 other trees, tall, magnificent ones, were taken down, but they weren't tulip trees. This tulip tree is over 100 foot high. Having thought that it might be protected, I was passing by the tree recently and saw 3 marks of red on the trunk and questioned, did this indicate that the tree was going to be removed? I haven't got an answer to this, and possibly I will get one. This tulip tree is situated mostly on township land rather than the lot itself. And so I really hope that this tree can remain where it's been for 55 years. We have lived on Stella Street. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Thompson, are you aware of this tree? I remember we did discuss, the committee did discuss the trees on Stella on John Street during our previous application. Maybe Mr. Rowe, Upper Canada Consultants, maybe you can let us know what is being done with that tree, or Mr. Duffy, if he is has joined the meeting.
I can take that question for you, Mr. Chair, and through you to Mr. Whittaker. So that tree, it's our understanding that indeed the tree is on town property. So any decision about its removal would certainly lie with the town. Now, the markings that you've seen, some of the foundation works out there, those markings were put on the tree to evaluate elevation when they were setting the foundation. They are not a marking that indicates any removal.
Oh.
Thank you, Mr. Whittaker. Does that help
yes.
you?
I mistook them as signs for the tree person to come around and take it down, because it looked like many trees have a sign like that on. So if that's nothing to do with taking the tree down, I'm very happy with the situation. Thank you.
Maybe, Mrs. Bizzotto, is there someone from our engineering department available maybe to maybe let us know maybe if there is a plan with regard to the tree?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Mr. Aiden is available with his toga. He is from our Public Works Department in the engineering component. So I'm not sure if he has anything to add with regard to the tree.
Could I just say one more thing? I did discuss this with Councillor Hildebrand, who I believe discussed it with two members of the town of Pelham staff. And I know that somebody is aware of it, but I don't know who those two people were.
Okay, so the issue has come before Town of Pelham staff, and I'm sure that Town of Pelham staff will deal with it appropriately.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Ms. Wilford or Mrs. Bizzotto, have any comments been received by email during our discussion on this particular application?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I will check our @clerk's email address. One moment. Through you, Mr. Chair, it is now 4:29 and we have not received any comments.
Then I would suggest that we close the public portion of the with regard to this application. And members of the committee, do you have any questions for staff or Mr. Whitaker or the consultants regarding this application before we make a decision? Mr. Clausen.
No, I've been involved in the other decisions and well aware of the property, and I'm well aware of the tree. And I'm with Mr. Whitaker. I'd love to see it stay.
Mrs. Marsh?
I have no comments. Just thank you to staff and Upper Canada for their thorough planning analysis.
And I have no comments to ask Mr. Whitaker or staff other than I agree with Mr. Clausen. I'm sure that town staff have looked at the tree, and hopefully it'll be able to remain. And is there any further discussion by members of the committee? If there is no discussion, could I have a mover and a seconder with regard to the recommendations of either granting or denying the variance applications in front of us with regard to this application? Do I have it? I saw Mr. Clausen's hands go up first, Mrs. Marsh. Mr. Clausen.
Okay. I'd like to move that we grant this application. They've been there a number of times. I've seen that one house already being built in that, and I understand it is a minor variance. It's a flexible design, and they're going to ask to see an elevation in that. They'll have nice amenity space. The zoning bylaw is maintained, and the intent of the official plan is maintained. And actually, it is desirable for the surrounding areas. It'll allow flexible design maintenance of a near rear yard amenity space. And we grant this application granted without prejudice to any other application in the town of Pelham. And the Committee of Adjustments considered written and oral agreements and agrees with minor variance report analysis and recommendation that this application meets the Planning Act test for minor variance. The only conditions would be that they obtain a building permit, and also for the Director of Community Planning that they put forth some elevation, some design to make sure that it conforms to elevations required and to the scenery to how they want it done, so be moved.
That's the first one.
And I'll second that.
All in favor? Carried. So that dealt with both variances, minimum side yard and the maximum lot coverage?
Yeah.
Okay, in that case, I guess we can proceed. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for attending the meeting, and we look forward to seeing a new house. On
See you
that.
soon, I'm sure.
Thank you.
Have a good day. Thanks.
And with that, we will move to the next application in front of us, which would be a conveyance application B5 2020. It's with regard to 1427 Station Street in the town of Pelham. Ms. Wilford, do you wish to proceed with the summary of the planning report?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I will. Just give us one moment to get the PowerPoint presentation up. For B5, right? Okay. Participants are reminded. Ensure your background is free from offensive or vulgar material. If inappropriate material is visible, you will be removed from the meeting. Vulgar or offensive language will not be tolerated. If inappropriate language is used, you will be removed from the meeting. Participant microphones and video cameras will remain off until they are called to speak. Once your comments have been heard by the committee, your microphone will be muted. Once voting on the item has taken place, participants will be removed from the meeting completely. You may resume viewing the meeting via live stream. Decorum. The Committee of Adjustment is a formal public hearing requiring decorum, meaning all comments are to be made through the chair. If you have pre-registered to speak, you will be given an opportunity to address the committee at the public portion of the meeting. If you are live streaming and wish to submit a comment live, please email clerks@pelham.ca. Please note, comments must be received during the public portion of the meeting, otherwise they will not be considered. Disrespectful comments will not be tolerated. Cheering, booing, or hissing from the gallery will not be tolerated. Please note, if decorum is lost, the meeting may be recessed and persons asked to leave. Through you, Mr. Chair, we are on application file B5 2020 1427 Station Street. The subject parcel, shown as Part 2 on the attached sketch, is an interior parcel of land situated 61 meters east of Station Street, lying south of Highway 20 East Regional Road 20 in the town of Pelham. Application is made for consent to partial mortgage discharge and to convey 2,824 meters square of land, Part 2, to merge with the abutting property to the south, Part 3, 1419 Station Street. 1,257.6 meters square of land, Part 1, is to be retained for continued residential use of the single detached dwelling known as 1427 Station Street. Note the boundary adjustment is intended to facilitate rear yard land consolidation for a future draft plan of subdivision in East Fonthill. To date, the following comments have been received. Building Department, no comments. Public Works Department, see conditions. Public, none received at the time of writing this report. Planning staff is of the opinion that the proposal applies current planning and development goals dealing with appropriate infill development, making more efficient use of the existing urban lands where suitable to do so. The severance will better position the lands for future subdivision development in a more efficient manner, which will not negatively affect the development ability of the balance of the lands. The proposed severance should not negatively impact the surrounding neighbors with regards to traffic, privacy, and stormwater runoff. The remnant land will continue to serve as a single detached residential use until the time as the landowner explores alternative development options. In Planning Department staff's opinion, the application is consistent with the provincial policy statement and conforms with provincial, regional, and local plans. Planning staff recommend that application number B5/2020P be approved subject to the following conditions. That the applicant merge Part 2 with 1419 Station Street, Part 3. Confirm that no existing utilities currently cross the proposed lot lines. Should any existing services cross the proposed boundaries, then the applicant shall bear the responsibility for relocation and removal costs. Submit an overall comprehensive lot grading and drainage plan for both parcels demonstrating that the drainage neither relies nor negatively impacts neighboring properties and that all drainage will be contained within the respective lots to the satisfaction of the Director of Public Works or designate. Please note, the Public Works Department issued a memo received August 31st, 2020, indicating the requirement of an overall lot grading plan is no longer required. This memo was circulated to the Committee of Adjustment and applicant. Provide a written acknowledgement that the owner will be responsible for payment for the front-ending contribution payable to the town of Pelham for the East Vaughan Hills Stormwater Management System oversizing, and to provide the Secretary-Treasurer with a registrable legal description of the subject property together with a copy of the deposited reference plan, if applicable, for use in the issuance of a certificate of consent. Provide the final certification fee of $3.95 payable to the Treasurer, Town of Pelham, be submitted to the Secretary-Treasurer. All costs associated with fulfilling conditions of consent shall be borne by the applicant. If you wish to receive a copy of the Notice of Decision, please contact the Secretary-Treasurer in writing as soon as possible. Nancy Bizzotto, Secretary-Treasurer, Committee of Adjustment, 20 Pelham Town Square, P.O. Box 400, Fawn Hill, Ontario, LOS 1E0, njbizzotto@pelham.ca. This contact information can also be found at the Town of Pelham's website.
Thank you, Ms. Wilford. I see that Mr. Kaiser has joined us. Mr. Kaiser, do you have any comments you wish to make with regard to the application in front of us?
Well, Mr. Cook, Mr. Chair, good to see you again. For the members of the committee, you may question the drainage, the change in the drainage conditions. So these lands are part of a land assembly, and hopefully they will soon be part of a draft plan of subdivision moving forward, attaching to other lands. I was part of a group, five large land developers that moved the East Vaughan Hills secondary plan through process. There is a drainage plan in place for this whole area. All of these lands, well, certainly in the quadrant that I'm talking about, but north of Port Robinson Road and up to Rice Road, and south of the arena or community center, flow into the stormwater pond at Rice Road and Port Robinson Road at that corner. So there's a drainage plan in place. We're in somewhat of an ugly duckling stage in that water courses have been changed and the plan's been set in place in terms of how all this is achieved. But to actually achieve this at this point in time with this piece of property, there's nowhere for water to go to. So it's somewhat of a, what I say is an ugly duckling stage, but shortly there should be a plan in place that will move this forward, and everything, all the stars will align as for the drainage plan for that portion of the East Vaughan Hills secondary plan.
Thank you, Mr. Kaiser. I assume that eventually the lands that you are assembling will go through the plan of subdivision process, and any concerns with drainage will be dealt with by town staff at that particular point in time. I hope I'm correct on that. I'm pretty sure I am.
You're absolutely correct on that. And we acknowledge that as in the condition, there will be a contribution to the oversizing of the pipes and the stormwater pond located where I alluded to.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kaiser. Ms. Wilford, have any pre-registered participants wish to speak on this particular application, or have there been any?
Through you, Mr. Chair, there have been no pre-registered members of the public to speak. I will just check now our clerks at pelham.ca email address. I do note it is 4:41 and we have not received any emails. If you wish to close the public portion of the meeting, you may do so.
I think we can close the public portion of the meeting. Members of the committee, are there any questions to Mr. Kaiser or town staff regarding this application? Mr. Clausen? Nope. Mrs. Marsh?
Yes, to Mr. Kaiser, I'm just wondering if he has any timelines for the proposed completion of the land assembly and then the new proposed subdivision. And are there any foreseeable issues with drainage while you're waiting for that plan of subdivision to be approved?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to the member, no, there's no perceived problems in the interim. The backlands or rear lands of these properties for years have been left. Hasn't been good drainage, to be honest, and right now there's nowhere for it to go. In terms of timelines, my answer would be as soon as possible. Having said that, the lands immediately east of what we're talking about here, there has just been a plan of subdivision and zoning submitted, and there has been zoning submitted for the lands immediately south of the properties we're talking about here. So in answer to your question, better than that, I would say probably in the planning process takes time, but probably an application within the course of the next year for these lands.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Clausen.
That was the question I was going to ask with regard. The only other thing I say, I'm assuming they're going to maintain the land so they won't have weeds and everything else, and the neighbors get upset while it's in their hands.
Do any members of the committee have any concerns with the application? What are your thoughts on the application?
Well, we've granted the consent on a couple other lines, so I gather we're just continuing with what's been going on. It would seem kind of well, we've already considered all the possibilities, so why would we change our mind?
Exactly. And with that being said, are we ready to render a decision? Can I have a mover and a seconder with regard to this application? Mrs. Marsh.
I'll move that file number B5-2020P, application for consent to convey Part 2 to be added to Part 3 of the sketch, and partial discharge of mortgage be granted with the following conditions: to the satisfaction of the Director of Public Works, to ensure the new lot is serviced individually, and that written acknowledgement that the owners responsible for payment of front-ending contribution for stormwater system oversizing, and to the satisfaction of the Secretary Treasurer that Part 2 is to merge with Part 1 and a solicitor's undertaking is required, that the Secretary Treasurer be provided with a registrable description and a deposit plan if necessary, and that the final certification fee of $395 be provided. This decision is based on the following reasons: that the application conforms to the policies of the Town of Pelham Official Plan, Regional Policy Plan, and Provincial Policy Statement, and complies with the town zoning bylaw. This decision is rendered having regard to the provisions of Section 5124 and 5125 of the Planning Act as amended. No objections to this proposal were received from commenting agents or neighboring property owners, and that the Committee of Adjustment considered all written and oral submissions and finds that, subject to the conditions and provisional consents, this application meets Planning Act criteria, is considered with the Provincial Policy Statement, and complies with the Growth Plan, the Niagara Region Official Plan, and the Town Official Plan.
Mr. Kaiser.
I wonder if we could rewind the tape on that, because I'm not sure those comments refer to this particular application. I could be wrong, but we spoke in the first of Part 1 and Part 2 merging.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think that may have been just a typo or a misspeak. It is Part 2 to be added to Part 3 of your sketch.
Okay, and then there was a comment in regards to servicing. There's nothing to be serviced within this.
But what you're being asked to do is confirm that there are no services to Part 3.
Oh, no services crossing over, is that it?
Yeah,
okay.
There's virtually no service. I think what they want to try and confirm is that currently Part 3 is not serviced.
That's not the way I heard it, though, but because I did see the condition.
Part 2, I'm sorry, Part 2 is not.
I did hear that in the conditions that Part 1 and Part 2 merged. That's what was read.
Well, it should be Part 2 merges with Part 3.
Correct. Could we go through those one more time just to be sure we're all on the same page?
Through you, Mr. Chair, did you want me to read the conditions in full that would be set out on the notice of decision that would be sent out to Mr. Kaiser? If you like, I can read them out in full.
Are they the same conditions you read prior?
They are the same. They are the same conditions.
Then I'm absolutely fine with that.
Okay, because the condition that I have says Part 2 to merge with Part 3 of the sketch.
Correct.
Not Part 1.
Did you want me to go through that, Mr. Chair? Just read them out in full for you?
Mr. Kaiser?
I'm fine if the conditions Ms. Wilford read, Mr. Chair, earlier in the meeting are the same conditions that are being imposed by the committee.
Okay.
They are.
I'm fine with that then. And then through you, Mr. Chair, to the members of the committee, staff, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Kaiser. Do we have a seconder for the motion?
I'll second it.
Mr. Clausen. And with that, all in favor? Mr. Kaiser, your conveyance is granted with the provision, definitely, that part 2 merged with part 3 is shown on the sketch.
Scared me for a second. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Kaiser. You may leave the meeting if you so desire. Okay, and with that, we are going to move to the next application. As soon as I get my papers all put together here.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just give us one moment. We are just bringing in the applicants, their agent, and then we'll be sharing our screen. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Participant.
Okay, just hang on a second. This is a minor variant. We're going to actually do the consent first, which is, hang on a second, let me get this sorted out here. We're going to do B6 220 first, because if B6 is not approved, then there's no reason for the minor variance. And with that, basically our consent application B6 2020, the northeast corner of Weber Road at Poth in the town of Pelham. Concession 13, part of lot 8, roll number, and there's a long roll number. And with that, Ms. Wilford, would you please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Participants are reminded, ensure your background is free from offensive or vulgar material. If inappropriate material is visible, you will be removed from the meeting. Vulgar or offensive language will not be tolerated. If inappropriate language is used, you will be removed from the meeting. Participant microphones and video cameras will remain off until they are called to speak. Once your comments have been heard by the committee, your microphone will be muted. Once voting on an item has taken place, participants will be removed from the meeting completely. You may resume viewing the meeting via live stream. Decorum. The Committee of Adjustment is a formal public hearing requiring decorum, meaning all comments are to be made through the chair. If you have pre-registered to speak, you will be given an opportunity to address the committee at the public portion of the meeting. If you are live streaming and wish to submit a comment live, please email clerks@pelham.ca. Please note, comments must be received during the public portion of the meeting, otherwise they will not be considered. Disrespectful comments will not be tolerated. Cheering, booing, or hissing from the gallery will not be tolerated. Please note, if decorum is lost, the meeting may be recessed and persons be asked to leave. File B6/2020P northeast corner of Poth Street and Weber Road. The subject parcel, shown as Part 1 on the attached sketch, has 150.43 meters of frontage on the east side of Poth Street, lying north of Weber Road in the town of Pelham. Application is made for consent to convey 3.98 hectares of land, Part 1, to create a new lot for continued agricultural use and/or residential use. 4.06 hectares of land, Part 2, will be retained for continued vacant use of the light industrial zoned lands. At this time, no future use has been proposed for Part 2. Note, the proposed lot creation is intended to divide the parcel, which currently has split official plan designations and split zoning. Minor variance file A24/2020P is being considered concurrently. To date, the following comments have been received. Building Department, no comments. Public Works Department, no comments. No public comments were received at the time of writing this report. NPCA, no objections to the minor variance and consent applications. Niagara Region, cannot confirm if the proposed development complies with the minimum distance separation MDS requirements. Archaeological assessment will be required at site plan control stage for the industrial zone lands, Part 2. Not opposed. Planning staff is of the opinion that the proposal applies current planning and development goals regarding the enablement of appropriate economic development on land suitable to do so, dry industrial, by disposing of lands that contain very different policy and land use permissions. Therefore, the proposed consent avoids harm to any key natural heritage features by ensuring those ecologically sensitive features remain wholly intact by avoiding lot fragmentation. The proposed lot creation also does not induce any more non-agricultural development such as residential dwellings than what previously exists within the agricultural designated and zoned lands Part 1. In planning staff's opinion, the application is consistent with the provincial policy statement and conforms to provincial, regional, and local plans. Planning staff recommend that application B6/2020P be approved subject to the following conditions: that a comprehensive overall lot grading and drainage plan for both parts demonstrating that drainage neither relies upon nor negatively impacts adjacent properties, and that all drainage will be contained within their respective lots to the satisfaction of the Director of Public Works or designate. Confirm that no existing utilities cross the proposed lot line. In the event that services do cross, the applicant shall be responsible for the costs and responsibility of their relocation and/or removal. Provide the Secretary Treasurer with a registrable legal description of the subject parcel together with a copy of the deposited reference plan, if applicable, for the use of the issuance of the Certificate of Consent. Provide the final certification fee of $395 payable to the Treasurer. Town of Pelham be submitted to the Secretary Treasurer. All costs associated with fulfilling conditions of the consent shall be borne by the applicant. If you wish to receive a copy of the Notice of Decision, please contact the Secretary Treasurer in writing as soon as possible. Nancy Bizzato, Secretary Treasurer, Committee of Adjustment, 20 Pelham Town Square, P.O. Box 400, Fawn Hill, Ontario, LOS 1E0 NJ Bizzato at pelham.ca. This contact information can also be found at the Town of Pelham's website.
Thank you, Ms. Wilford. Are there any representatives wishing to speak on this application? I noticed in the package we had a report from Mrs. Arbor and Mr. DeVries. Do you wish to Mr. DeVries, are you with us?
I am. I don't have any comment, but I believe our representative Adele is raising her hand. Although it might not be virtually, I could see it on my.
Mrs. Arbor.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chairman. I have nothing further to add to the detailed staff reports and correspondence that you have received, and we are in support of the conditions of consent that are before the committee this afternoon.
Thank you, Ms. Arbor. Ms. Wilford, have there been any pre-registered participants wishing to speak on this particular application, these applications in front of us?
Through you, Mr. Chair, no, we have not received any members of the public wishing to pre-register to speak. I will now check our email just to see if we've received anything. And I can confirm it is 4:56 and we have not received any emails in regards to this application. If you wish, you can close the public portion of the meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Wilford. Members of the committee, are we in favor of closing the public portion of the meeting? Yes. Mr. Clausen, yes. Ms. Marsh, yes. Yes. Members of the committee, do we have any questions to ask either Mr. DeVries or Mrs. Arbor?
I looked at the site. I mean, you've got two different zonings.
And we're basically
what they want to do.
Yeah, the conveyance really follows the zoning alignment. Am I correct on that, Ms. Arbor?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, that is correct.
Thank you.
I just want to comment. I noticed the drawing we're given. It shows that the dividing line is between the zoning of the two parcels that would be created.
I think that's perfect. I'm sure the planning department would.
I just want to be sure of that.
Also, Mr. Thompson, you concur with my comment?
Oops. Through the chair, I didn't hear the absolute last.
My comment was, I'm sure the planning department would be happy to have the conveyance boundary follow the change in zoning.
Yeah, I mean, usually like the zoning boundary lines and official plan designation lines follow some fixed boundaries, such as roads or parcel fabric lines, but in the odd time they don't, this being the case. This would have otherwise followed the line precisely, but because of the natural heritage feature being the provincially significant wetland buffer, the region and the NPCA and all the provincial and regional policies require that those features not be fragmented further. So that is why the lot line has to jog southward to avoid the need for environmental evaluation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Thompson. Are there any questions committee members may? Mr. Clausen.
Through the chair. Actually, Curtis, is more, when you do your zoning and go through your official plan and that, do you actually do a survey and actually put a line through as to where the two different zones are, or do you just like draw a line through and say, this is light industrial and this is agriculture? How is that done at the time of planning?
Through the chair. So like just in general, like when zoning boundaries are created, is that what you mean? Or in this case specifically? You
have one parcel of land, one owner. Now all of a sudden it has two zonings on it. How did that happen?
Well, it actually starts with the regional official plan land use schedules, which designated the strip of land along Weber Road as dry industrial, or in their plan, it's referred to as rural area. And as a result, the town's official plan schedule has designated that industrial. So that zoning boundaries have to reflect that accurately to be approved by both town and regional council. So this zoning line is a direct result of the official plan designations, which determine where they lie.
Okay, fine.
Committee members, are there any further discussions on these applications? Are we ready to render decision on application B6-220 and also A24-2020? If so, can I have a mover and a seconder to either grant or refuse application B6?
Sorry, through you, Mr. Chair. I apologize for interrupting you. I have only read the presentation for B6. Did you want me to go through the presentation for the minor variance application prior to making your decision?
Maybe you better go through the minor variance application.
If you'd like, we can certainly do that. Just give us one moment to share our screen.
Basically, we have the same report for each.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Participants I think we can skip through this.
Yeah, we can skip.
So this is for file A24/2020P. This is the northeast corner of Poth Street and Weber Road. Excerpts from planning report. The subject parcel has 150.43 meters of frontage on the east side of Poth Street, lying north of Weber Road in the town of Pelham. The minor variance application requests relief from section 7.2A, minimum lot frontage, to permit a minimum lot frontage of 150.43 meters, whereas 180 meters is required. Section 7.2B, minimum lot area, to permit a minimum lot area of 3.98 hectares, whereas 10 hectares is required. The variance is requested to legalize the proposed agricultural lot under consent file B6/2020P. To date, the following comments have been received. Building Department, no comments. Public Works Department, see conditions. No public comments were received at the time of writing this report. The NPCA, no objections to the minor variance and consent applications. Niagara Region, cannot confirm if the proposed development complies with minimum distance separation (MDS) requirements. Archaeological assessment will be required at site plan control stage for the industrial zone lands. Part 2, not opposed. Is the variance minor in nature? The proposed reduction in minimum lot frontage and minimum lot area is minor overall because the existing agricultural zone portion of the subject lands, Part 1, legally exists on a lot of record despite sharing its border with industrial designated zoned lands. The proposed lot size is capable of supporting a variety of permitted uses without causing adverse impacts to the neighborhood. Is the variance desirable for the development or use of the land? Both proposed variances are desirable for the subject lands because they will allow for a full range of permitted agricultural uses to continue to be available in the future despite being on a smaller parcel of land. Does the variance maintain the general intent and purpose of the official plan? Both proposed variances maintain the general intent of the official plan because they will continue to protect and enhance lands suitable for agricultural production, notwithstanding permitted non-agricultural uses, one single detached dwelling, which protecting sensitive core natural heritage features. Does the variance maintain the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw? Both proposed variances maintain the general intent of the zoning bylaw because the 3.98 hectare parcel size is still capable of a variety of agricultural uses, perhaps together with a permitted single detached dwelling. The purpose and intent of the zoning bylaw is maintained because the proposed zoning relief doesn't otherwise alter what was already permitted, the land use under the original parcel size. Planning staff is of the opinion that the proposal applies current planning and development goals regarding the enablement of appropriate economic development on lands suitable to do so, prime agricultural area, by disposing of lands that contain very different policy and land use permissions. Furthermore, the proposed minor variance avoids harm to any key natural heritage features by ensuring those ecologically sensitive features remain wholly intact by avoiding lot fragmentation in connection with the concurrent severance application. The proposed minor variance also does not include any more non-agricultural development such as residential dwelling than what previously exists within the agriculturally designed, designated and zoned lands, Part 1. However, the proposed zoning relief does allow the full range of agricultural use to be permitted on a somewhat smaller parcel size, subject to all other applicable regulations being compiled with including MDS regulations. In planning staff's opinion, the application is consistent with the provincial policy statement and conforms to the provincial, regional, and local plans. Planning staff recommend that application number A24/2020P be approved subject to the following conditions: that the approval of the minor variance is subject to consent file B6/2020P obtaining final approval. Through you, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Wilford. I guess with regard to the application, I need a mover. I need a recommendation with regard to file B6/220P. Can I have a mover and a seconder with regard to the conveyance?
Could I ask one question?
Yes, sir.
With like archaeological dig and all that, any construction or anything that is to take place in either lot, Curtis, does that mean they have to go through site plan control, and that at that time any request can be made, such as archaeological, and so we don't have to put anything in any conditions on our subject to our approval?
Mr. Thompson, could you respond to Mr. Clausen's inquiry?
Through the chair, yes, the archaeological assessment would be required at site plan control stage, which would kick in for any industrial or commercial operation on the southern parcel or Part 2. As far as the parcel to the north, it really only get called into question in the event of a site plan control application for a greenhouse. A dwelling would be permitted as of right. So under the building permit process, the municipality doesn't have any leverage to ask for an archaeological assessment, although it's still in the high potential area.
Now, the other question I have, in the Part 2, they have a corner taken off, Curtis. There doesn't have to be a zoning for that little triangular piece, correct? It's assumed that the industrial lot will have a little corner cut and the agricultural will have an extra triangle, correct? Because the line actually goes horizontally across.
Through the chair, yes. So in the event that this is approved and the new lot is registered, the Part 2 would technically still have split zoning only for that little sliver up in the corner. that wouldn't change.
I just wanted to be clear on that. What we are approving here, so I understand that now. Thank you.
Do the applicants have any further comments they wish to make to help us make a current render decision on these applications?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I have nothing further to add to the detailed reports that were submitted. And thank you for consideration of this application.
Thank you. Do we have a mover and a seconder for application B6? Mr. Clausen.
I would move that we, for file B6, that would we approve, if we grant one, we're going to grant both. Is that right? I'd just say we grant both. But
first of all, we have to have, the consent needs to be agreed to before we can actually do the variance.
Okay, let's say with the consent, I would ask that this consent be granted. And as the conditions that Ms. Holly read there, part of the conditions are they have to have a site overall grading plan and drainage plan. Now, they were talking to industrial. Would they? I would think you'd want both parcels to be part of that lot grading and drainage plan, and that there are no services or anything in between the two lots, and that each of the two lots would be serviced separately, that they share in anything like that. And that the Secretary Treasurer be provided with a registered legal description and a copy deposit, a reference plan, and that they make a final payment of $395. And I guess what we have to say, the application conforms to the policies of the town of Pelham, their official plan, regional policy plan, and provincial policy statement. It complies with the town's zoning bylaw. Just noting that one triangular piece is still going to be industrial. It'll be part of the agriculture. The decision is rendered having regard to the provisions of section 5124, 5125 of the Planning Act. And they didn't have any objections from any of the neighbors or anybody, nobody commented. And the Committee of Adjustment, we've considered all written and oral submissions and find that the subject to the conditions of provisional consent, the application meets the Planning Act criteria, is consistent with the provincial policy statement and compliance with growth plan, Niagara Region official plan, and the town official plan. So be moved.
Thank you, Mr. Clausen. Do I have a seconder?
I second that.
Thank you, Mrs. Marsh. My only clarification, I'd like a clarification. Mr. Clausen, you mentioned you'd like to see the overall drainage, grading and drainage plan for both parts 1 and part 2?
Yes. The two are together.
Yes, but you'd like them to prepare a drainage plan for both parcels of land.
Well, the way I understand it, they want it over the parcel. But the thing, my question is, at what time do you do it? At the time of construction, or what is right now? The land is sitting the way it is.
Well, I think if I've got it right, and I may not, which is not unusual, a drainage plan would be prepared for part 2 as part of the building permit application.
Right.
And because part 1 is remaining agriculture, there's not going to be a building on it. There is no building permit.
But there's no building on the industrial
there's
part
no building
either.
on the light industrial currently. But the drainage plan would actually be undertaken at the building stage on part 2 because it is zoned industrial.
Sorry,
Mr. Thompson, I need your help, Mr. Thompson.
Through you, Mr. Chair, if I may have some clarification for you. Certainly, we do have a representative from Public Works here, but if I may just read the suggested condition in full, it may be helpful. It's to submit a comprehensive overall lot grading and drainage plan for both parts, demonstrating that drainage neither relies upon nor negatively impacts adjacent properties, and that all drainage will be contained within the respective lots to the satisfaction of the Director of Public Works or designate. So that is the suggested condition through Public Works. We do have Tolga, a representative from Public Works, if you do wish to have more clarification of what's needed.
Actually, what I just heard is exactly what I meant. Like,
okay.
You have to have both parcels. That's all I'm saying.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We do have that noted in the condition.
Okay, thank you very much. All in favor of granting application B6 220P? All in favor? Carried. With regard to application A24 220, are there any comments from members, from committee members? Are there any additional comments from the applicant?
No additional comments.
Thank you. Can we have are the members willing to come to a decision on application A24 220? If so, can I have a mover and a seconder for the granting of the variances being requested?
Well, I'll move that we grant the minor variances.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Clausen.
In the fact that we're creating two lots, and to make them, I guess, official, we have to forego the required 180 meter frontage and the maximum lot area of 3.9. So we'll accept it the way we created the new ones, and that the variance is minor in nature. Each parcel is large enough to support a variety of uses with no negative impacts. And the intent of the zoning bylaw is maintain each parcel has their own zoning. And the intent of the official plan is maintained. The proposal is desirable for this land is it allows agriculture and it allows industrial use. The application is granted without prejudice to any other application in the town of Pelham. And the Committee of Adjustment, we've considered the written and oral comments and agree with the minor variance report analysis and recommendation that the application meets the Planning Act test for the minor variance. And the one condition has been met, that B6 2020P be approved.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just for clarification on that condition, that is so that it receive its final approval where it's issued its certificate of consent from the Secretary Treasurer.
And then also, if there is any, through the chair, I guess we have to put that in case there is any, all of a sudden somebody writes in and wants to say oppose it or something, and there's a change, then at least we
through you, Mr. Chair, this is this condition is to ensure that the lot is you have now granted a provisional consent. The applicant has a year to fulfill those conditions, and once they've received the certificate and they've registered and the lot has been created, at that point, that is what this condition here is referencing, that those things need to happen in order for this minor variance to take place. If they, for some reason, don't follow through with finalizing and creating that lot through the next process over the next year, then the minor variance won't take effect. I hope that helps.
No, fine. I was saying in another way that if something happens to change the B6, we have to have it in there that it has to be finalized one way or the other. That's all I'm saying.
It has to be finalized before A24, the granting of A24 will take effect. All in favor?
Oh, through you, Mr. Chair, I think we still need a seconder.
Oh, we still need a seconder. Mrs. Marsh, thank you very much. Chairman's getting in front of himself as usual. All in favor? Carried. Mr. DeVries, Ms. Adele, Ms. Arbor, congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
And with that, we'll move on with our agenda. You can, Adele, Ms. Arbor, and Mr. DeVries, I guess you can leave the meeting at your leisure. Committee members, we have minutes for approval. Can I have a mover and a seconder for the approval of the minutes of February 4th, 2020? Mrs. Marsh moves. Mr. Clausen seconded. All in favor? Carried. Can I have a mover and a seconder for the minutes of February 20th, 2020, which was a general committee membership meeting of our Committee of Adjustment? Can I have a mover? Mrs. Marsh, can I have a seconder? All in favor? Carried. The third set of minutes we have is for the Committee of Adjustment meeting of June the 30th, 2020. I'm sure everybody has read them. Can I have a mover? Mr. Clausen, can I have a seconder? All in favor of the minutes as prepared? Thank you very much. Can I have our next item on the agenda is the adjournment of the Committee of Adjustment meeting of today's date. Can I have a mover? Mrs. Marsh, can I have a seconder? Mr. Clausen, thank you very much. All in favor? The meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much, staff and participants. And I'm sure we'll be meeting again in the near future.